Hello, my name's Hope. If you're new, I'm 25 and I'm working on my first book. I'm in the third draft, doing some beta reader editing, feedback, and all that stuff. If you've been here before, welcome back. Happy to have you again. I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite a while, but I recently just watched Amina's recent YouTube video, and now I really feel like I need to kind of talk about it. Yeah, we're going to talk about anxiety with writing. This is something that many people deal with, anxiety around finishing or even starting a project, whether you're stuck in the middle or kind of somewhere near the end. Just know that you're not alone. If you see me looking off this way, it's because I have notes set up. I really have been thinking about this topic for a while, and I want to make sure that I get all the things in that I've been wanting to say for a while now. I want to start with just acknowledging that writing anxiety can make it feel like it's an isolating experience, but just remind yourself that you are not the only one experiencing this. So I just want to talk about um, why it shows up, how it affects our process, and how I manage to push through and try to leave that space behind me, if that makes any sense. So I want to start with a little personal story. My debut novel that I'm writing right now is called Beyond Words, and it is a small town romance. Um, Obviously, when you start a new project, it can be kind of nerve wracking, kind of scary. Depending on how you plot and stuff, you may have the entire story figured out, you may not have anything figured out. So obviously, beginning anything makes you a bit nervous. But for me, obviously, with the beginning nerves, the further into the story I got, the more my anxiety increased. And with, thinking about it, and I do talk to a therapist, so talking about that feeling as well, she helped me realize that the feeling that I was experiencing was more so perf- living up to a certain standard was causing me anxiety. So obviously, with anything in the world, everyone has their own opinion on literally everything. And so my brain was trying to get, like, finishing makes it real. It pushes it out into the hands of actual people to read and criticize, and it's not something that you can kind of protect in a little bubble anymore. And so that is what made me experience really, really hard anxiety at about the like 85% point of my draft. Um, Anxiety can like manifest itself in different forms, like perfectionism, procrastination, burnout, or just total shutdown. And I can definitely say I was experiencing the procrastination and shutdown. Perfectionism, maybe, but only because I obviously, anybody who creates anything wants it to be something that is loved. And so, yeah, there's hope for that. But with all that I've done to improve and get past this feeling, I've realized now, I mean, my book now is with beta readers, so I've totally managed to push through the anxiety inducing feeling and just accept that not everyone will love my book, but that's okay because, in the nicest way possible, I wrote it for me. And if it helps other people or other people loved it, that's wonderful. But it all came down to and it was written for me. So there's got to be a level of like accepting that it's not for everyone. But writing can cause anxiety. Um, Writing is a very vulnerable thing to do. You're taking things that you may have experienced, made up, seen somewhere, and like you're developing a whole story out of it. Your voice, your thoughts, your feelings all go into the work that you end up writing and then hopefully later publishing, whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing. It's not only creating, it's creating to be seen, and that causes extra anxiety that's not there for like just personal things that you don't plan to get out into the hands of a reader. There's also expectation. So whether this is your first book, you're trying really hard to get it right when there is no right. If this is your second, third, fourth, or so on book, it can be difficult, I imagine. Obviously, I'm working on my debut novel right now, but I've already started to plot out my second book, so I can definitely already feel some of that like hesitation with, was my first book, good? Is the second book gonna live up to that? Or honestly, I feel like with anything, there's always that internal drive to do better with everything that comes next. So all I can hope for is that book two will be better in the eyes of a reader as opposed to book one, but obviously loved nonetheless. There's also a lot of external pressure, whether it's from social media, other videos on YouTube writing advice, craft books, or just internal, just you comparing yourself to others. Everyone has an opinion, and sometimes you can feel like you're behind if you're not writing as much as somebody else might, but that isn't true. You write one word, you're still a writer. You take a day off, you're still a writer. Um, all of that pressure just adds to the already existing noise, though. So I can definitely say it does not help. Now I want to talk about the most common anxiety traps with writing. The first one is it's not good enough. This ends up being a loop. You end up writing a sentence, delete it, rewrite it, delete it again, and it becomes like a spiral. This leads to suddenly feeling like you can't write anything good ever again. Um, the big thing about first drafts is that they're supposed to be messy. They aren't supposed to be perfect. And it's literally just you being able to get the thoughts that are in your head down onto paper so they become physically real in a sense. Um, but in this spiral, you forget that the first draft is supposed to be messy, so your brain is convincing you that what you've already been struggling with isn't great, and because this draft looks terrible, I can't ever write a book and I give up. The next anxiety trap I want to talk about is the perfectionist spiral. And this one is kind of dangerous. I almost got stuck quite a bit in this one. And this is just how they say when you write, sit down and write. Do not go back and fix things. Don't edit as you're writing because you get stuck and you're just fixing and fixing and fixing. And the draft is never getting any longer. So you're not ever working on a completed draft. You're just fixing a couple chapters. Um, you like I in my notes I say you stop writing so you can fix your outline, you fix your character arcs, you redo chapter one again and again, and you're stuck in this loop of reworking instead of progressing. So again, that kind of ties into the last one, just trying to get yourself to remember, maybe even a sticky note, a note on a whiteboard, a reminder on your computer, whatever it may be, that the first draft is meant to be messy. And this does not mean it's bad. The third anxiety trap I want to talk about is the comparison trap. And this one is more so if you surround yourself with other people on YouTube who write, or maybe you are deep in the publishing world where you see people around you getting great book deals or writing 10,000 words in an hour, whatever. I think that's kind of an exaggeration. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that. But um, you see all these people doing great things and achieving things that maybe you don't feel that you could do. And so you begin to question whether you're even good enough, um, or if you are even making enough progress. And that is a dangerous world in itself. Comparing yourself to others happens with literally everything, even down to like physical appearance. And there's no good that comes from that either. So, with this one, I kind of sometimes just try to picture younger me writing a book and how I would approach her if maybe she wrote 5,000 in a day and at that moment maybe I was struggling with that. Obviously, any of my friends that are trying to achieve big goals, I would never um, be like rude or jealous. It's more so like encouraging and feeling proud, if that makes any sense as well. So that one is a pretty big one and it ties in with just everything. So that is a big one to watch out for. The last anxiety trap I want to mention is fear of finishing. And that's the big one that I mentioned earlier for me. It's always a sneakier one though, because it's not obvious. You may think that as you get toward the end of a book, you feel more confident and you're ready to just, oh my gosh, I have 3 chapters left. I am going to sit down and write 3 chapters and not stop until I finish, when unfortunately that is not always the case. Um, your your brain is scared again to get it out into the world for people to actually read and criticize and put out their opinions on. Um, Sometimes you shut down, and because it's not obvious, you start to think that maybe you're distracted or being lazy. And it just boils down to your brain is trying to protect you from the vulnerability of it being done. Which honestly is kind of sweet if you think about it, but it really is important that you focus on why you wrote it and who you wrote it for. And also tie in the fact that if this is your first draft you're just finishing, it is not going to be perfect. That's why there are rounds of editing. That's why the concept of beta readers exists. Um, Writing friends as well. That would be a really cool thing to get into, because with that you can verbally talk about your writing and maybe even swap and get opinions from close friends, which would definitely help with feeling confident in your work. Want to talk about a few things that have helped me personally. Hopefully, I can get through this section fairly quickly because I kind of put in some of my own feelings in all of my um, facts that I mentioned earlier. So, the first one is normalize the mess. And this is just accepting that it's part of the process. It won't be perfect, and that's okay. I I wrote in my notes, "You're still a real writer even on the hard days," which is very sweet. The next thing I do is separate feelings from facts. And just because you may feel like something isn't the greatest doesn't mean it is. Emotions are valid, but not always accurate. Um, Something that I do for this is I will take out a notebook paper, because something about just physically writing is more healing for me. So I'll pick up a piece of paper and I'll write down everything my brain is telling me, all those anxious thoughts. And then for each one, I write a direct response. So for an, for a brief example, maybe I write, "My book isn't good." That's what my brain is telling me. So I would write a direct response would be, "The first draft wasn't good. I'm on draft 3 now. It is much stronger. And from the beta reader feedback that I've been getting, it is very good. My ability to be descriptive has only gotten better as I've continued writing, and with all of this knowledge, I know that I can go back and fix the beginning of the book where it maybe wasn't as strong. Another thing I do is just break it down. Not the whole book, but one scene, one sentence. And sometimes if I can't get back into it, I will jump for a timer. Something about setting a timer gets me so motivated. I honestly started doing this with writing, if I'm being entirely honest, but I've used it for literally everything in my life since learning that it works with writing. I just recently got new furniture and I spent yesterday building furniture. And as I opened one of the furniture boxes, there were obviously instructions. And the instructions said it takes an hour to build. And I don't know what about that felt like a challenge, but I started a timer of an hour just to see if I could finish it before. And I would like to proudly say I finished it in 45 minutes. So take that. Another thing that I do is I like to create a writing routine that doesn't feel very heavily pressured. So I don't make it like feel like a big thing if that like obviously it's important to me and I want to sit down and write, but I like to light a candle or maybe not sit at my desk. I just make my writing space kind of feel safe so it doesn't feel as anxiety inducing. Another thing that helps me is gentle accountability. Um, I have a friend who checks in quite often, and I tell her all the time that I cannot say how much I genuinely appreciate her. I love you, Ashley, if you're watching. But um, she just the checking in and the feedback and reminding me that things it is not the end of the world. I'm not behind, and just who doesn't need a reminder that you can do it? Let me be your reminder. You can do it. The last thing I do for myself, this one I don't do quite as often, but as an example, I wrote down if I write 500 words, I let myself get coffee or I let myself get another book. For me, 500 words is a little small because I'm looking at my bookshelves right now. I have way too many books, which is not a bad thing, but I know my limits. I don't live in a very big apartment, so um my rewards for that would be much long. I would need to do much more. But a coffee is always fun. Going on a short walk is a good idea. Honestly, sometimes I just go to Barnes and Noble and walk around, and that feels like a reward, even if I don't buy anything. Um, Something positive to reward myself with because of the amount of progress I've made helps. So to kind of tie everything together now, I just want to mention that if you are feeling anxious or you feel like you're in an anxiety inducing headspace, I want to say this directly to you that you are not broken. You're not lazy. You are not untalented and you're not doing anything wrong. You are a person with a human brain who's trying to create something meaningful, and just that act as a whole create it just needs it takes courage. Sorry, I can't. And I feel like talking like this is something that I needed. And so I get emotional thinking about having somebody say these things to me. So sorry that I couldn't get those words out very clearly. But my point is, you can finish, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Um, Take it one step at a time. And I even wrote, even if that step is just opening your document, or writing a note to your character, or watching this video, just to remind yourself that you're not alone. If this video helped you feel seen, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear where you're at in your writing journey and maybe what helps you push through all those hard moments. If you're stuck, drop a comment that says, I'm still writing, so we can all cheer you on. Um, if you don't write, that is also okay. Just comment. What emoji should we do this time? Just comment a smiley face, because why not? We need a smile. Um, yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe if you're interested in watching more of these videos. Maybe share this with a friend who may be struggling with this well. Um, in the meantime, remember, you don't have to write fearlessly, you just have to write. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.